Another one. Okay. Evening, everyone. Welcome to the January 6th, 2026 meeting of Portsmouth School Board. I want to begin by welcoming our new board members, Steve Adler
Thank
and Jennifer Shum. Welcome. Well, we look forward to working with you and having a fun time together, fun and productive time together. I want to welcome Susan Morrell, our city attorney. She agreed to be with us.
I think I've met all of you.
She's been very helpful to us. Anytime we need help trying to figure out how to do things, Susan is there for us. So thank you, Susan.
Yeah.
So we are in the process of selecting a new chair and a new vice chair. Oh, I'm sorry, that's right. I forget. This is an official meeting because we added the agenda item about the budget. Ordinarily, we don't do that. Okay, we need to stand for the pledge. Oh, first, let's have the roll call. Patty.
Absolutely. Tish Campbell.
Here.
Nancy Claiborne.
Here.
Fitz Blues. Here. Brian French.
Here.
Lee Hudson.
Here.
Byron Maddow.
Here.
Steve Adler.
Here.
Jennifer Shump.
Here.
Lisa Rappaport.
Here.
Eric Moore. Nathan Delaney.
Okay, now let's stand for the pledge of allegiance. It's over there for those. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of
the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God.
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Okay, now we will get on with the business of reorganizing ourselves. I just want to say it has been my distinct honor and pleasure to be the school board chair for the past 4 years. And I want to thank all of you school board members, our previous school board that I worked with in my first 2 years as chair. And I really want to thank our administrators, headed up by Zach, who does a great job. So thank you for the opportunity, and it's been a great honor and pleasure.
Thank you, Nancy. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
All your work.
You're welcome. I look forward to continuing working with all of you. Now we will ask for nominations for the role of board chair. So would anybody like to make a nomination for someone, or you can nominate yourself? Yes, Pip.
I'd like to nominate Lisa.
Okay. Anyone else? I would like to nominate Brian French. Is there anyone else? Okay, I guess what we'll do is ask each candidate to make a statement. We can always say about 3 minutes, just don't go on for a really long time. So we'll start with, I guess we'll go in alphabetical order. We'll start with Brian.
All right. I think I've worked with most everybody on the board. Been on the board for 8 years. Look forward to working with you guys. So first and foremost, I think Lisa would be a great candidate. I don't think you're gonna, I think either one, this particular case, I think would lead, and do a great job. I think it's important to just talk a little bit about my background because that's part of the motivation why I'm here today. And I've been here on the board 8 years and will to serve 12 when it's all over. The irony is my daughter started in kindergarten when I first got elected, and will graduate high school when I'm finished. So a little bit about me. I was one of those kids who's born in poverty and was homeless at times, and food insecurity, all the really tough things that kids can go through. And for me, education was that and specifically public education. So for me, this is very personal. Yes, I have kids in the school district, but for me, it's paying it forward. And that's why I'm here, to make sure all the kids have a great opportunity, an opportunity to have great education and a way out. And if they are in those situations, and growing up, when I had those opportunities, it was great teachers that changed my life. And help steer a trajectory a little bit better. I wasn't always the best kid, didn't always make the best decisions, but they definitely helped me grow. And so to me, that was, that's why I'm here. My journey kind of brought me into, the professional life I have today, is technology. So there's a couple teachers that would be very surprised today to know that, I got a master's degree in computer engineering. I have an MBA, and started businesses and have been in high tech leadership for my professional career. Some of them thought I'd be bagging groceries at Shaw's. They pretty much told me that. Of course, I had other great teachers that did see the potential in me. But those experiences taught me also the importance of education, because I've had to hire for a lot of positions in high tech, and knowing the importance of kids really understanding what they're learning versus memorization. But it became very apparent to me when I started interviewing candidates for the first time when I was in leadership positions. And, you can tell when the kids learn it versus, spit back formulas, especially when you're talking about electronics. And the irony of engineering is, although most people that aren't involved in engineering believe that it's a logical minded brain that is a good engineer, it's actually not. The tools are important, but it's a creative process. And so, through that lens, I look at education and I think about the importance of, I'm going over 3 minutes. I think the importance of really, we have foundational things, but the creativity in the programs, the kids have to learn many different ways, and being able to explore and learn and be creative in those things are super important to me. So that's how I got here, how I think about education, why I think it's really important. In terms of chair, the chair is still 1 of 9. Doesn't really have much more of a vote, or doesn't have much more of a vote than anybody else. But I do think it's about leadership, because I look around the table and I know that there's a commitment to community and kids around here. And I know everybody's heart's in the right place. The way I lead is, the way I've led teams in the past is I don't lead from the front. I always look for ways to enable the team to perform at its best. And it's an emergent property of good high performing teams is we do a whole lot more together than just have a dictator or a leader from that perspective. I think some of the things that I try to live up to, and I tend to focus on, and I hope that I have projected that for some of you guys, is a sense of fairness. I think about I'm a flexible person. I'm reasonable. Although I may have a position, a particular thing, I never put my feet deep enough in the mud that I can't change my mind. I also think about I care a lot, and I'm very transparent. So you get what you get from me, and I think that's kind of leader that I am. And if that's something that you're looking for in terms of leadership here, I can help enable this group to perform at its best. The other thing, just thinking out loud, is we have a lot of headwinds in front of us. And I think, when I first came in this position 8 years ago, I was really idealistic about it. I thought we could get a lot done, but the reality sets in pretty quickly, especially for the new members. This will hit you hard, but you don't have enough time to do everything you want to do. And although there's sort of project as yours, at the end of the day, where we're going to be able to make real change is the focus. So I'm hoping that I can help enable the group to create some of that focus. And we did some of that with the work with strategic planning and, really focused on curriculum alignment, K to 12, focus on the health and wellness of our kids in the district and focus on the budget, which is going to be a very a big headwind for all of us, including the city, especially with health insurance and everything else. So I'm hoping that you'll see in me that I can help you guys rally around, create that focus. And, like I said, at the end of the day, I won't be sad if I'm not picked. And I think we've got a great candidate, Lisa. So, yeah, that's it for me. Sorry, went over 3 minutes.
Thank you, Brian. Lisa?
Well, Brian, I respect the hell out of you and you're a hard act to follow. But I think, every single person in this room brings a really important perspective and lived experience and viewpoint to the work. And I 100% agree with Brian that when we find consensus and we focus as a group on the things that we think are the most important for our district, that's where we can really affect change in a positive way for kids. When we all have our own stories. And, for me, my dad was born in Poland during World War II and lived in a DP camp and came here not speaking any English. And, I lived in, 7 different towns and went to 7 different schools during my K-12 years and was very lucky to have teachers scoop me up in my high school and say, if you did the homework and you did the things, you might actually be able to succeed. And that had not occurred to me previously. So, in my own way, I too am here because I really have seen firsthand just how transformative schools can be and how much they can give every kid the right start in life. And we all want that. So, I also would not think that we were in bad hands if Brian ends up ultimately winning the vote. I think we all want the best for our kids, the best for our teachers, and the best for our district. In terms of what I bring to the table, I think that I work very hard behind the scenes to constantly be talking to people and taking the temperature of how people feel on issues so that by the time we come into the room to talk about stuff, we're able to more quickly get to consensus. It's not really my style to make motions that I don't think have a solid chance of succeeding and passing, because I think that it's better for us to focus our energy where we as a group have a consensus that we want to focus. So that's, my leadership style. As chair of our legislative committee over the last few years, I think I've done a very solid job of collating a massive amount of complicated information and distilling it for everyone so that everyone on the board has the ability to get simple information, or at least as simple as you can be with Concord, and be able to make a choice about where we want to advocate and why we want to take positions to advocate for our district. Because I really think at the end of the day, we can't be effective if we're not well informed. So I believe in making sure that we have as much practical and actionable information as possible in all of our agendas and giving everyone in the room the information that they need to make a decision that they think is the best decision. And, I think sometimes we have a healthy debate and we don't always agree. And I honestly feel like that's just part of the process. All of the opinions are important and everybody ultimately wants to do the right thing. So I think even when we have strong differences of opinion, it's still an important conversation. And I think it's important to facilitate that. I agree with Brian too. I think we absolutely have a lot of challenges ahead of us over the next year. And you could almost do a choose your own adventure on which ones are going to be the biggest and most complicated. But I think we 1,000% need to build a really positive and strong working relationship with our city council and with everybody in the city, because ultimately we are all working for the same community and spending the same money to do hopefully the best we can for our kids, and having a strong relationship there, I think, is vitally important. I'm also very cognizant of the number of things that are happening in Concord and in Washington that are very much beyond our control, where the best defense that we have is to be well informed and do the best we can to set policies and make budget decisions that try to the fullest extent possible to anticipate what might be coming. I think that open enrollment could be a huge problem for us. You know, every district in the state is struggling with that. Everybody's struggling with special education costs that are escalating and very murky at best guidance from Washington on what's even going to happen to the Department of Education over the next day, year, we don't know. So I think having somebody at the helm who's really on top of all of that and able to try to constantly put those pieces of information in front of the board is really important. And I guess at the end of the day, you know, I hope that, you know, I've got a track record here of collaborating with people and really trying to bring the most important issues in the district to the forefront so that we can have good dialogues about things and ultimately reach good decisions. And I 100% agree with Brian. However the vote goes, we've got an amazing group of individuals here who work really hard and care about kids. And at the end of the day, that's what matters.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Would anyone like to offer a comment, or shall we move on to the vote? Anyone? Okay. Okay, I made these really sophisticated ballots. Okay, you can all see. Tiffany's one. What you have to do is say who you're voting for, and then you have to give your name, because we will announce who you voted for and who you are. So Susan has alerted us, our city attorney, to a statute that says that that's the way we have to do it. So.
I got extra pens if people need them.
Very
Good, okay.
Okay, so why don't you all write down who you for and your name, fold it over, and Zach, would you like to be the counter?
I'm good at counting things.
Okay.
There
Zach?
you go, sir. Thank you. So this is here. No. I
Can you, announce?
I will, let me get them
You
all
want to count them first?
organized and counted, and then I'll give you the salt, and then I'll give you the
Susan, this is correct, the way we're doing it.
Yeah,
Correct.
so what I talked with Nancy about is the right to know law that you're gonna hear endless opinions about in terms of an open meeting. This is a public open meeting, you're a public body doing public business. And for that reason, your ballots can't be secret. So the idea is with this, it's opposed to just raising your hand, and Nancy thought people would be more comfortable doing it this way than raising of hands. But this one, there's a record of how you voted for the public.
So your new chair is Lisa, and your votes, votes in favor, Adler, Blues, Hudson, Rapport, and
Shell.
Sorry.
That's what I first said.
I was like, that's right. Okay. Right, I did a hesitation on me too. So there were four for Brian French, Maddow, French, Campbell, and Gregory.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
And I think you should come and sit over here. And you run the rest of the meeting. Congratulations.
Thank you. So I will now take nominations for vice chair.
Like to nominate Brian.
Anyone else for vice chair? Brian, we won't make you speak for another 3 minutes. 5 minutes. But we don't have any
Time on this time.
time. Okay,
Now, if it's unopposed, Susan, can we just do a simple,
Raise your hands.
all in favor?
Aye.
I-
Aye.
Yay, congrats.
So next on the agenda, you're in the hot seat to present the initial fiscal year 27 budget.
What's better way to welcome our
Right. Welcome aboard. Here we go.
you want to start?
Yeah, well, why don't I'll pass out paper copies. You'll hear from three of us on this. We will, existing board members know this. We give you the framing for the budget first before we give you your advisors. As anyone who has taught knows, if you hand out the binders, the students stop paying any attention whatsoever to what it is you're talking about. Is that why? Yeah.
That's fine. Yeah.
I think we're good.
So now I can
Just thinking about.
give it again.
Yep.
Right, together, just. So, no, we would.
Okay. So we'll take you through this framing, and then we'll hand out the binders. In terms of this particular presentation, our goal is to give you an overview of the proposal that we've developed in consultation with staff. We want to spend a little bit of time giving you a shared context on kind of the school budgeting and that within the framework of the city, kind of the city system. Just a reminder of the different role you play, how city council is involved in this process. Talk about some of the principles, assumptions, and cost drivers that are in the proposal. Give you the layout of what our budget workshops or the dates are going to look like, and we also have some decision points to make that probably won't be tonight. We'll be in consultation with Lisa and Ryan, and just prepare you for the process overall. I will say that tonight is not a night where we dive into specific questions about budget. It's just framing it, making sure you understand kind of how we went about producing it, and giving you orientation to the binder so as you get ready to do your homework, you kind of know how to go about it. So a little bit first about the city budget process. I stole some slides with permission from the city. The city did a really nice job of orienting all new members to the boards, commissions, and the city council. And the finance department had a few slides to talk about kind of the city budget process. I think we'll go quickly through a lot of this stuff, but I want to make sure you have the materials to refer back to. But I think it's important to think about the fact that the budget, kind of the timeline cycle it's kind of always ongoing. We're in the midst of, we're in the midst of developing, we're in the midst of implementing, and then closing out. We're always in a cycle of those three things kind of happening simultaneously all the time. And for us, where we get into this process, we're almost a year already into our budget kind of planning process. We started this work, we're in the summer. We're already having conversations about what's the frame of how we're going to go about doing this work. On this particular slide, you see in January and February, underneath the budget process, after we've done some stuff with CIP, you'll see in that the first bullet point is guidance from the council. I'll come back to that in a minute. But then you have charter departments hold public hearings. So and I think most of you know that. So we're three special departments in the city, ourselves, the police, and the fire, all have their own board or commission that help oversee those entities. And this is when we get involved in the overall process. But what's important to understand is traditionally, we will wrap up our work just before February vacation for students. and we'll be done, and you will have your formal proposal to the city council. But that process for the city then really picks up, the rest of their process picks up after that. And in most cases, the city will finish their overall, with us as a part of it, their work will get done the first week in June.
Can I just
Yeah.
interrupt 1 second? Susan, you certainly don't have to stay for this.
Oh, I'm just gonna listen for a while. Only when I need to.
Thank you.
Two other, another quick thing that was part of the kind of the city presentation was talking about there's 18% of the budget which is non-operating. That includes things like capital spending, but 82% of what happens in the city is operating expenditures. And of that 82%, most of it is those three charter departments, ourselves, police and the fire, and most of that is us. So you have an extremely important role in the overall, the development of the overall city budget, as you own the biggest chunk of operating expenditure. So let's talk about those roles, because I think this came up. We've had conversations about this in the past about what are the roles of the school board in this process, and what is the role of how does the city council come into play. So I think you guys know what your primary jobs are. Your policy setting operation. And then you develop budgets, and you're trying to develop budgets around your goals, which hopefully continue to be connected to the work that we did with strategic planning in the Portrait of a Graduate. You oversee kind of programming, what programming we're doing and not doing, those sorts of things. The city council, different than in some communities outside of Portsmouth, outside of city operation, we would go directly to the voters and say, hey, this is what we're planning to do. Here's our justification for the budget that we're requesting. We would have that conversation with the voters. Here in Portsmouth, in the city form of government, effectively the city council serves as that step. We are coming and saying that this is what we'd like to spend. The city council then, with the city manager, develops a budget proposal, which makes decisions about what she thinks should be included from what we've requested. And the city council has a conversation about what is our overall budget number for our department. Now, this is not line item control. Is that what it's going to be?
No, I was going to ask a question about
Sure.
just a clarification on the budget that comes out of this board goes to the city manager, not to the council directly. Is that
So it doesn't go directly to council, but we end up, so the count traditionally the overall budget is developed, which is the city manager's budget, which
Right.
is the council. But we still have the ability to advocate to say, well, this is what we still feel as a department is
I
necessary.
just wanted a clarification that with the budget that goes to the council from the city manager isn't a direct line from this board.
That's
The
correct.
city manager is a step along the way. Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yep. And one of the things in coming back to the line item versus departmental budget control. So what can happen is we put forward our proposal is this, the city council is they're trying to weigh how much money is responsible to give us, is they might probe things that are small and sort of like line items that they may feel are not legitimate uses of spending. Now they ultimately don't have control over whether or not we do those things. But they might say, well, we're not going to give you that money because we don't think you need it for that particular thing. The best example of this, for those who were on the board, when we had conversations about modulars, was when we were doing the modulars, and the members of the board who were part of it then felt it was necessary for us to have modular classrooms at Darrow. There was some conversation at the city council meeting as they were hearing that this was a possibility. There were some people who were saying, we don't think that that's the right approach. We don't want you to do that. And the board, articulated in a separate meeting, and not that you always have to do this, but it's like, well, that's great, but that's not, you don't have control over whether or not we choose to do that or not. You can decide what you want to do in terms of our overall funds. Ultimately, the board then took a vote to just to publicly declare, if we are underfunded in this other way, we're still going to get the modulars because we think this is important. Ultimately, the city council decided that they weren't going to dock us those funds, but we got into this conversation that I think was educational for the board. I think it was also educational for the city council. I think or members of the city council who said, I didn't realize we didn't have line item control until I realized I couldn't stop this. So again, we need to justify our lines to the city council, but ultimately you are the ones who are in charge of programs. I won't spend a ton of time on this. I think these are things you can go back to as we think about how we're trying to develop the budget. These are the next couple slides of the things we're processing through. We're trying to make sure that we're in line with community identified goals, which is again back to the Porch River graduate, that we have strategic priorities that we're trying to make sure that we're funding, strategic plan. We're trying to make sure that we are mindful of local, regional, kind of the context of what's going on around us. So, to whatever extent we can anticipate things like open enrollment, what we think is going to happen, what might be coming down from the state, what interesting things might be coming from the feds, that we, as much as we can, we try to build that into our budget work. We want to make sure we're effective in stewards of the taxpayer's dollar. We want to maintain existing levels of service. Part of our goal is we don't want to have diminishing service for the kids in our district. So we're always trying to think about that. We balance these other goals. And we want to make sure that we're transparent with folks. And of course that we are, Susan's here to help us do that, make sure that we're following all our legal requirements and responsibilities.
Okay, so a little bit of background for folks about strategic planning for Porch River Graduate, because that really helps found the foundation of what we're doing for budgeting. Back when the portrait was developed in 2023, 6 indicators were selected by multiple groups of people through multiple iterations. And those are the 6 indicators that the community, the schools all decided are the way that our students would be embodying or portraying their experience as a Portsmouth student. So passion for knowledge, global awareness, community contribution, collaboration and communication, transferable skills, personal well-being, empathy, and kindness. So we take the budget and we use the budget to make these things happen and to help the students develop these skills and dispositions. We also have a strategic plan that has 3 separate focus areas. And we're going to just quickly go through those areas. And we're going to look at what we did in the past year using some of the budgetary allocations to do that. Focus area 1, rigorous and aligned K-12 curriculum. We will ensure a rigorous and aligned K-12 curriculum instruction that provides access to all students and create engaging, relevant, and meaningful learning experiences. So last year, we were able to finalize curriculum maps in all content areas K-12. We had the new math curriculum at the high school and in the elementary schools, moving right along. Clipper Learning Center was started to get established at the high school and is in full operation this year. And we continued our professional development for teachers across multiple content areas and multiple instructional touching areas so that we could continue to support the curriculum across the district.
Second bucket of 3 is around educator capacity, and particularly our focus has been around giving teachers more effective feedback on an ongoing basis. That started as a conversation about strictly evaluation, but that has grown through our committee to really looking at feedback, which at times will include evaluation, but just ongoing regular professional feedback. We've done a bunch of work. We have a committee. We've done a bunch of survey work of the staff, done a lot of detailed work in that regard. We've worked with our teachers union around making sure that we don't have any obstacles to instilling a new system, and are working collaboratively with them. And we've now got it down to 2 systems that we will be piloting now in the spring. We'd hope to have them in the fall. It took us a little longer than we wanted to. But we have 2 systems that we'll be doing small pilots on in the spring with the goal to implement in the fall of next year.
And finally, focus area 3 is about safety, well-being, and belonging so that we can know our students deeply, develop their self-efficacy and self-awareness, focus on their safety, well-being, and belonging. Multiple safety upgrades were made throughout the district last year. And when we're talking about safety upgrades, we're talking about things like cameras and doors and locks and the sort of physical safety apparatus things that need to be in place. We've also been able to implement a Navigate 360 platform district-wide, which helps provide ALICE training, professional development, and support across those areas, and alerting systems so that we can do drills of many types, not just active shooter, but things like tornado drills and those kinds of things. Our Character Strong and Wayfinder programs have been implemented and are fully in effect. Those are our social emotional learning programs, and those are going strong. Character Strong goes from kindergarten to 8th grade. Wayfinder is at the high school. And we just had at our last meeting prior to the holiday break, presentation about our Panorama survey data, which is looking at our student well-being and whether they feel that they belong in schools and what can we do to make sure that they feel more safe psychologically and social emotionally. So a lot of work was done last year in this area as well.
Next, we just talk a little bit about kind of some context. Where are we as we are kind of pursuing these goals, and where are we in relation to some of the things that are happening around us?
So our test scores consistently are at 15 to 20% higher than the state average across all the areas, English language arts, mathematics, and science, all grade levels and all subgroups. We are above the state average, which is amazing. We are also top 5 district in the state for niche.com. All of our schools are in the top 20% in US News and World Report, and 2 of our elementary schools have made blue ribbon in the last 4 years. So a lot of things to be proud of across our district.
Another thing for us to think about, this is part of has been part of the conversation in the community, it's around enrollment. So enrollment in New England, I think we've had this conversation. This is the last 10 years. This is our actual enrollment. Similar to most of New England, we've been at a 1 to 2% kind of drop over that period of time. But what's interesting, and I think we talked about this in one of our recent meetings, I think this is an important part of the conversations. I think the community is used to that this is the story, and the idea that this will just continue is that projections we have now, or 10-year projections from our third-party partner NASDAQ, are that this stabilizes, if not starts to come back to that 10 years. And I know if you were looking at the paper today and you're reading about all these units that are going in, they kind of do, all that work. It's something that we're going to have to keep an eye on as we go forward. I think the assumption that we are going to continue to be at a 1 to 2% drop is going to be challenged in the upcoming couple of years, and we're going to have to keep our finger on the pulse. Just in terms of budget development process, those of you who have been doing this for a while, you know how this works. So in August, down in the summer, we're having conversations about where do we think we are, what do we think, what are some possible targets. We mentioned there, the 3 of us, but this is also some conversation that we're having with the city, trying to gauge where folks on the city staff side think we might be. And I will say this is particularly challenging this year because we were in the midst of an election. They had no idea who was going to be on the council. The entire council could have turned over. I really appreciate the fact that city manager and the deputy city manager for finance and administration came to us early on this year to say, look, we don't know what we're going to have for a council, but here are some things that we're thinking about that we'd like to put in front of you. We start working with cost center managers. When we say cost center managers, that's a combination of principals and directors in October. To have them start working with their staffs around trying to do needs assessment and trying to figure out what they need for the upcoming year. We do a series of meetings with all those folks. We do in November. We develop an initial kind of concept draft. We go back to principals with that draft to kind of see how people are feeling, get one more sonar ping for us. And then we complete that draft, and then we run it back to our principals and directors just to say, this is what we're doing. And that's where we're at before we come to you. Brian and his team during the holiday break are hustling to put together all those things into the binder that we'll give you in a few minutes. We conduct multiple budget workshops, and we have to conduct 2 public hearings as part of our process, where folks can come in and have an opportunity and limited opportunity to speak to you about what they think about the budget proposal. All of this, when you're done, typically you wrap up in February, end of February, before February break. It goes off to the city manager's office. I will just one thing that is goes off to the city manager's office for final consideration. I will say that there is some ongoing conversation back and forth between city staff and us while this is happening. So there's not a wall set up between us. We're having ongoing dialogue as you're deliberating, as they're trying to prepare for their budget process. this gets put together. It starts, we're in April, May. We start having those conversations at the city council level. And then ultimately the city council adopts a budget in June. And if the city council does not have a budget in place by June 30th, then automatically the city manager's proposal becomes the budget. As far as I know, it's never happened in the city. But it is there if they were unable to come to a motion. Here's that just visually. Here's how that works. And then just quickly kind of, traditionally what the roles are, your role and our role in servicing you and your vision for what you want for the district. Just in terms of desired outcomes, we want to keep making sure that we're providing outstanding educational opportunities, but also that we have an eye towards improvement, that we're not staying static. We're happy that we're where we are. There's a lot of great things to celebrate about where we are, but there's still work to be done. And there's things that can be improved. And we want to maintain our existing level of service, and we want to make sure that we're a good partner with the city as a whole as we go through that work. I'll turn it over to Brian to talk a little bit about numbers in this proposal.
Okay, so these numbers are based upon proposed budget and use of continuing service. We're keeping the same level of services. We are adjusting some people, which we'll go into. But these are what we came up with in order to match what our first working with the city with their numbers, their expectations were of us. So your current FY 26 operating budget, the one we're in right now, is $67,174,740. That's a little different than the number that was approved originally by the city council, because we had a transfer of about $1.2 million of supplemental funding due to the CBAs that were approved last year. So I know we had a lot of discussions and there's some confusion, but we add that to our budget. Our budget this year is now based upon that number as far as the increase goes. Health insurance is up $730,698. Dental insurance and other ancillary benefits are up $25,515. Our increase in wages based upon current CBAs or CBAs that were in negotiation that will hopefully get done before the end of the year. Those people only get a step. They don't get the actual increase, so only the step is built in. That's $1,428,257. Substitutes. It's been I know the last couple of years you guys have made note that the substitute lines are always overspent. That is common with long-term substitutes, especially if teachers are out, whether it's maternity, medical, or what have you. So we are slowly working those lines back up. This year they were increased $85,957. Our workers' comp and property and liability insurance is up $96,535. Our regular and special ed student transport is up $229,678. Energy and utilities is only up $44,700. Part of that is we are now in a contract with the city that the city started about a month ago, where we have now discounted electricity rates. It's a new contract we just rolled into, so we are recognizing some savings there. Our special ed out of district tuitions and services is up $362,073. Just to make note, last year, you remember, that was about $1 million more. So we've made a lot of headway in finding efficiencies in that department. So the sum total of all the continuing service charges is $3,007,413, which brings us to a 4.48% increase above our current budget, which brings us to a total number of $70,182,153. So how does that break out? Much simpler terms. Okay, our final budget that's adopted this year has 379.1 FTEs in it. That's a 67,174,740. Continuing services increase, which is like we talked about, keeping everything the same, just some moving of people, some repurpose, some same program, same level of service. That's 4.07% at $2,736,853. Additional repurpose positions. These are not new FTEs. These are just, we've taken some retirements, some other movements, and taking advantage of those to add, to put in some positions that will enhance the service we provide. That's $270,560. That's 0.41% of the budget. Our staffing changes by keeping our services level, we've gone down 4.56 positions. That's just to keep in mind at a 4.5% rate, just to maintain that, we do have to lessen our basically our amount of staff we have. So that's going to be a challenge every year as we go through this budget. So next year we'll be having the same conversation about how many FTEs we carry. So that brings us to the 4.48% at 70.1 million. And that includes 374.54 FTEs. You can see it's 4.5 less than we had before. So our total staff count, because the numbers we were just talking about is our operating fund. That goes directly to taxation. That's what the city council figures is what's going to affect our tax rates. So in the operating fund that we just discussed, we have 374.54 FTEs, like I said, but there are other departments that are either self-funded or they don't affect the tax rate because they bring in funds that offsets themselves. First one is food service. We have 17.11 FTEs in food service. Lister Academy, and those numbers after those are just the cost centers you'll see in your books that will correspond to that. Lister Academy is 9.45 FTEs. Our sped tuition programs, which is cost center 207, 44.2 FTEs. Little Clippers, cost center 215 is 1 FTE. Our Title 1A grant, we have 7.57 FTEs coming out of that grant. Our IDEA grant, which is special ed, 6 FTEs come out of there. And our futures program has 0.8 FTEs. So the actual staff count encompassing everybody in every building, including the central office, 460.67 FTEs.
Excuse me, are you saying this is what we have now, or this is what is
That's what we have
being
right now.
proposed?
We have.
Thank you.
And so, and we just wanted to point it out because when we get to the point where we're having the city conversation, that when we get into FTE counts, which has been traditionally has driven the city conversation, when we're talking FTE counts up, down, indifferent, that is around operating fund. And I think the easiest way, it's not a fully analogous, but it's basically like, think of it as local taxation. So things that are covered by local property tax, we're at 374 folks, and we're down 4.5 or so folks, equivalents. But there are other people who work for us, and we just want to make sure they're not invisible, because we will show you, like we did before, when upcoming meeting, I will give you the kind of the dynamic flow chart that we had before of every single person who works for you. Little picture of them, their job, who they report to. And then if they come from a different funding source, you'll be able to see, oh, this is a person we pay for special education funds. Oh, this is a person we pay for with Title 1A. So it gives you a picture of who are those folks, where are they inside of the organizations we're having those conversations. Yeah.
So-
Maybe,
Sorry.
maybe for next time on the FTEs that are in the self-funded bucket.
Yep.
If we can get a similar breakdown in terms of difference year over year from like what that bucket looked like compared to last year, because on the left side of this or whatever, we have, we're down 4.5 FTEs in the tax funded portion.
Yep.
But we don't have, we have a static picture for like.
Sure. So I'm confident we'll be able to supply. I don't know how much longitudinal data, because it hasn't been the conversation.
Okay.
And I think part of us kind of, we're having the dialogue tonight, like that needs to come. I don't know. It needs to be more part of the dialogue, even if the conversation over here is still about tax rates and local tax rates. It's like, okay, over here should be a little bit more transparent. And
Yeah, I think it's just nice to see if the changes are there.
so I'll see, whatever data we can do to go back and to look at that.
So other mitigating factors that come into the budget, our cost of living increase, which we use a 10-year rolling average of the consumer price index. For this year, 3.03%. So all our CBA tied, that's pretty much everyone is looking at a 3.03% increase for FY 27 compared to FY 26.
Can I just say on that, that this is a very, if you haven't spent time in the district or, this is super unique. This fact that the city's been able to negotiate into almost all of its contracts a built-in kind of inflationary measure, which with the idea that it's going to be fair to the employee and fair to the city in terms of maintaining people's purchasing power. I've never been in a district where it's been done. I've never seen it anywhere. So this is a really pretty unique thing. The Portsmouth, if you moved the town away, you wouldn't see anything like this. Everybody would be all over the place, different amounts from different groups. And so the importance of this in terms of just a smart budgeting tool that's fair to both sides of the equation is pretty unique. So sorry, Brian.
We also have ongoing school care conversations on the recent assessment. We've decided that our Dondero modulars need to stay for now based upon demand for space. We originally expected them for 2 years. We're looking at least the third year. Our current plan addresses some internal requests, but avoids adding any positions.
Can I ask a question about the modulars, which I'm sure you've thought of? We're still renting, I'm assuming,
Leasing, yes.
leasing.
Yep.
Are the lease payments going down at all the longer we have it? What
Slightly.
would it be to purchase them outright? Is that even something?
We're looking at that now.
Okay,
We really have to determine how long we plan on keeping them because it will determine whether it's worth spending money.
I know, it's kind of one of these, a 6-7, right?
Look at you killing off 6-7. We did have, the conversations, we had a conversation the other day, Byron, Kenny and I sat and talked through kind of what we were seeing in terms of class enrollment, all those types of things to make sure that we were at least in a position to be clear going into this conversation, whether or not we were going for another year. I think we got as far as being confident about the upcoming year. Want to characterize that dialogue any further?
Yeah, I think the math for me was, it's $40,000 or $50,000
Correct.
line item to lease them.
Yeah.
If you drop them, then you're looking at one of the grades at Dondero being in that 22, 23 like per section. We also don't know what kindergarten will look like in the future year. So is it worth $40,000 for those numbers? I think is like where I was in that conversation.
I think that's where the combination of those two factors and the fact that we got hit with a bigger kindergarten class out of that neck of the woods than we thought we were going to get. So there's a little bit of trepidation about pulling that back or taking but not just the buffer, taking the buffer and losing a classroom at Dondero and the impact that they have. I think that's what there is there is that conversation about at what point is there a value to just purchase outright, but I don't know that we're.
Okay.
And the increase in the lease payment. Will it next year?
Oh, okay,
So
right.
percentage wise, extremely small.
Well, you would think it would go down because, now it's used.
I will say that the teachers do enjoy it.
They're very nice. Yeah,
And that's
they're
exactly,
very nice.
it's air conditioned, it's even.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's the only AC in Dondero.
yeah.
They get their own bathroom, they get their own.
Yeah.
closets, so.
So just in terms of our schedule, and this is a little bit different than some stuff we put out to you guys, some late breaking news, and I want to make sure you're aware. So we have some things already set up for you because anticipation of not knowing where leadership was and feeling like definitely going to want to talk facilities based on some dialogue with several of you in the room. We're definitely going to have a special education conversation because those are things that really drove the budget the last time around. And then we wanted to leave space for other topics the board wanted us to address, but making sure we're getting staff time to build up whatever those reports are going to look like. I will say I had a good conversation this afternoon with the city manager. There's two things that were added that are new that are on. So one is the 14th of January. That is not a meeting of you, but you are invited to attend meeting on the 14th, and that is the city's initial budget preview to the city council. So a conversation of what the and I think you'll hear a lot from the city manager and from the deputy city manager for finance and administration talking about here's what they see as the context, and here are some of the kind of the big drivers of the potential city overall budget. I think, and that's going to start new conversation with the new council about is there guidance that they want us to provide everybody. Of course, it's sticky for us. We're going to give you, pieces of paper that are built on what we have, but we don't know what's going to come out of the new council. But this will be your opportunity, if you wish, to come. Seats for you right up front to hear what the city council is going to hear initially from city management. So that is an invite to all of you. Then before the holidays, one of the city councilors had asked for a joint work session around some discussion with the school board around long-term financial things that the city council might want to be aware of, and how are we thinking about those things. And so the conversation I had today with the city manager was that there's an openness to, sometimes when we've had work sessions, it's meant us coming another night that wasn't our night to do stuff. I think there's an openness to having city council come on a night that we're already going to meet, to come and be with us for an hour to talk through some of those things. And right now, I think there's an interest in exploring January 27th or February 3rd that we already haven't had on the calendar to be one of those joint sessions. But that's something I can work with you, Lisa, to figure out what we think is going to work for folks. But those are the two dates that we were discussing. That would put the city manager if we were able to commit to both of those, and that would put her in a position to be able to see if she can get a quorum for either one of those meetings. So those are the.
So
Oh, yeah.
just also.
Oh,
the
I'm sorry. Yes,
27th,
thank you.
There's a location change from what's in your binder. So you're just going to want to note that conference room A is the new location for the 27th, regardless of, we didn't change it on the next slide, but regardless of what happens, whether we have the joint work session, we're still going to have a meeting, but it's now in conference room A on the 27th. So you're just going to want to note the
And
location.
I would guess, since the city council's the big dogs in town, that they'll kick out whoever's in the chamber on the 27th if we end up on the 27th, but we'll see. But as for right now, we are tentatively booked for conference room A, which is a change from what's in your bindings, just heads up. So we are typically we are those are the meetings. We also hold, I think I mentioned this before, we need to hold at least one public hearing on our budget. We always hold two. And those will be on the 27th and the 10th. That's the initial schedule. I know there's been conversation. So these are basically Tuesdays. We're together Tuesday nights for a while. I know there has been conversation that in the past that the board that needed has also done some Thursday sessions. That was really part of the time. And again, those are all things that we can figure out with Lisa. And your binder. So if you want, I can hand them out, Brian, and can start talking to Penny. You want to do some quick? Oh, here you go.
That's resolution.
So just so you know, your budget book orientation, there's a lot of information in this budget book. Rather thick. It's not final budget, it's the proposed budget, it's the first version, it's the first portion. So the whole idea behind it obviously is transparency, so you can deliberate as a board over everything that's in it. And the public understanding too, because this will be facing. Once you receive these, we put them online.
A little slimmer.
So each section, you'll see sections in there with budget narratives, you have a summary page, you have lots of additional resources you can refer to. We operate in a cost center system. So there's about 35 cost centers, happen there. There's three different parts to each cost center. There's the salaries, benefits, operating, and not every cost center has salary. Some are just operational budget centers. So let's.
Yeah.
So we're gonna go on a field trip, bind a field trip.
Yes.
Hey,
On a magic school bus.
so if you open up to the very first page.
Oh, what's that?
Gotta help.
Yes.
The very first thing you'll see my narrative, basically a 10-page narrative explaining budget, the different effects on the budget, the health and dental insurance, the ancillary benefits, salaries and wages, FICA, substitute teachers, all the things we talked about earlier, workers' comp and property and liability, energy and utilities, student transportation, and then a breakdown of the number. So this version of the budget includes 2 repurposed positions. You'll see that under proposed budget requests. Those requests are already built into the budget. One of them is the RISE teacher for the middle school. The other one is assistant director of pupil services. There is a breakdown of that in there. And of course, at the end, a summary of everything that's in there. Right after that, you'll see the meeting schedule, which again has changed. You'll let Zach put up there earlier. Take that on our next version. Go to the next section, the narrative, where you basically go through all the different schedules we go by, including the CIP, school budget development, and the city budget approval. Then you see basically a summary of the entire budget in one page.
This is a chart. It's got a yellow strip top. Nick, yours is
So FY 27 proposed school budget. And basically that is your adopted budget on your left, proposed budget on the right.
I'm sorry, the table, not a chart.
It's here, it's in the same, you're still in the narrative section.
Jumped ahead of the rest of the class.
Next
He said summary.
Under summary, no, before summary. Yeah.
There you go.
Thank you.
So what this page does, basically breaks down every cost center. Gives you a total at the bottom. You can see the increase, percentage increase, as well as your
This is
FTE.
my cue.
last.
Thank you, Susan.
Okay.
That's a great field trip, Brian.
You're jumping off the bus.
I'm jumping off.
Thank you.
Right behind that, you'll see the 10-year average of our health insurance renewal rates.
Sorry. Push that out loud.
Look at that.
You can see we had quite a large increase this year. We had a high utilization with the school department this year. About 143% above what we pay in for collecting for premiums. 43% above that was what we paid out in claims.
It's like the 80s.
So that's the increase.
That's no.
We know why.
What's that?
Why we saw that large an increase.
Major expensive claims. For us, it's actually the way it worked this year. If you really dig into the numbers, there's 3 major issues. First one being cancer. Second one being musculoskeletal.
Wow.
The third one being mental health. So it's not as much the cost of the service, it's the utilization of the service. This year we had our highest utilization we've ever had in this district. So good, everybody's going to the doctors, trying to get good, better, but along with that, you usually find something and it all adds up over time. The next page we have is basically how the city does that 3-year 10-year rolling CPI that we talked about, how they get to that 3.03%. Everybody's raise for this year, increase for FY 27. Next page after that, you'll see how we budget for FY 27 salaries. It's pretty standard across the board. We have all the unions in here, all the groups that we deal with, and how we figure their increases for the next budget. Yeah, FY 27. Next one is your New Hampshire retirement system. This is what they send us every 2 years. Every 2 years, they rerun their numbers and they decide how much share we're gonna pay. for our employees. And you can see our non-certified employees, we pay 12.75% of their income to the retirement system, and teachers, we pay 19.23%. The next page will show you the breakdown. Go down to 26, 27 at the bottom. Student teachers pay 19.23. And non-state employees pay 12.75. But go to the far right, you'll see member only pays 7%. In some cases, we're paying almost 3 times what the employee pays into the retirement system, so they can have this when they retire.
Why are police and fire so much higher?
They can retire after 20 years.
Oh.
Teacher is at least 30. All actuary. The next page is our Primex renewal for property and liability. This actually was the one shining point in our budget where it only went up to $13,000 over last year. We actually had a really, really good year when it came to property and liability insurance. And that was reflected obviously in our premium. After that, you're going to see our special education aid. This is the letter we get every year from the Commissioner of Education on how much is being funded for state special ed funding. It's an increase of $16 million over last year. And it actually is supposed to be fully funded this year, although usually see when we get it, how much it's fully funded is. And I also included in the entire state's report, included after that, who gets how much and where. Our workers' compensation budget comes after that, and that is basically determined by the city. Although we have our own property and liability policy coverage with the school department, when it comes to workers' comp, the city is lumped in as a whole. Frankly, laws will be read. You'll see the breakdown of what each of us pay, and you'll see the school is one of the bigger ones up there. We had an $83,000 increase in workers' comp. They didn't have a bad workers' comp here. After that, you're going to find your mandatory report to voters on school expenses. This is new this year. It's due to RSA 189.76. I summarized it in the front, and you'll see all the numbers after this. It's very plain Jane, these graphs, because that's what the law requires. I cannot put anything on these graphs besides the narrative front explaining it. So it shows your average cost per pupil, your average teacher salary, and your administrator salaries. All of those are adjusted for inflation to move along with today's dollars. And the last one is your top administrator salaries in the district for this year, this current year, the 25-26 school year. That's required to be disclosed to you every year. So if we go into the next section, summary section, this has some good info from NESDEC. This is actually, we only showed you 2 graphs from the NESDEC enrollment projection report. This is the full report. You can really dig into it and look at it and see what, how the numbers were obtained, how they got to the numbers. You'll also have your historical information in here, as well as projected birth to kindergarten relationship, New England enrollment trends, any additional information they have in there. Notice. Then we get into the next section, which is actually going to be very helpful to you because now this is how our chart of accounts are saying. This is how you can tell if you're looking at a number, general ledger line, you'll be able to determine where you are. It's kind of your roadmap to the line. So, for example, we have, we start with our fund, then we go to our cost center, and then we do the type of expense it is, what location it is, department, and if it's sped related, and then the last one's your object code, which breaks it down even more to maybe it's a salary versus a supply line.
Oh, good taxonomy.
So your cost center guides are in there, your function guides, your support services, your site location guides. And lastly, your object guide. These are the numbers I live in every day. They're easy for me. Since you only see this short time during the year, I don't expect you to be the experts in it all. So lastly, you get into the actual budget itself. I'm going to give you a sample one it's a little easier to follow. So I'm going to ask you to jump to a cost center 188 towards the end on the right.
Tab 188.
Tab 188 for maintenance.
It's page 107. It's the example that Lab did.
Say examples, so this is not actual budget?
Well, this.
No, it's
this
not.
is our-
We're picking one,
We picked one out.
one that's an easy one to demonstrate.
So every cost center is set up like this. You'll always see at the top your salary information, salary and benefits. So you have all your employees listed there. We have on the right, the 1.0 you see, that's the FTE assigned to that person. So not everybody's a 1.0. And you'll see that in other sections, although this one's pretty easy to figure. You also see your FICA, your retirement percentages are in there. And the big one is you'll see the operating budget, the bottom half of that. So that includes your contract services, your cleaning. We try to break it out as much as we can without it being too wordy. But you can see what it was last year. The left side is the current year we're in now, which is the adopted budget. Right side is our proposed budget for FY 27. You'll see things like repairs to vehicles, maintenance equipment, salt spreaders, mowers, portable radios. Those are all included in repair and maintenance. We have cleaning, we have contract services, which we use a lot here. But as you go through the maintenance, you'll see how we break it out as much as we can. That's how you can tell what we're spending. The only difference is because we're going to a new accounting system at the end of the year. So we haven't changed some of the names in here, so you're gonna see Sherburne in there, Sherburne School. That is our JLA, so. Your academy, just haven't changed it yet,
Okay.
so. That's when you see Sherburne in there. This is one of the few spots you're gonna see Sherburne. But you'll see it's broken up by school. You have Dondera, you have Little Harbor, you have New Franklin, you have middle school, and you have the high school. Then when you get to the very, very bottom, you'll see the total FTEs, your total budget. So the one on the left, one that was approved, one on the right is what we're looking for FY 27. I'd like to say it's simple. It's simple to me because I'm in it every day. It's not simple to you, but I am, what I'm trying to do is give you at least a good foundation when you go through this. You know what you're looking at rather than saying, I have no clue what this is.
And to frame this, and Brian, we didn't prep this, but so like, for example, how these lines came about, how did we end up developing these particular requests?
So we originally, when we started our discussion in September, in October, I was putting together the blank versions of these for this year's proposed budget. I send them out to all the cost center managers. This particular one goes to Ken Litchi because he's a German. So Ken, for example, Ken will get this. He will look at, I also give them 5 years of history of what they've spent in all these lines. So they can look back and say, did I really need as much in this line or do I need more in this line? They'll also go through and they'll say, all right, this is what I need to do this year that I didn't do last year. I need to make sure I have money in there for that. So they'll go through line by line and fill in all these items and the numbers. And then they send it to me. I put them together. And then Patty, Zach, myself, and my assistant BA will actually meet with them all of them for about 45 minutes to an hour. And we'll go over line by line each one and have them explain to us what they need, what they're going through, what their thought process was. And, sometimes we'll run into stuff like, hey, do you really need that? Because that was a program that ended last year. Oh, yeah, you're right. So we get a meeting of the minds, that stuff comes out. And
The same thing. We're looking at 5 years worth of data and we're having those conversations, talking through what you're looking for blank.
Correct.
Looks like over 3 of the last 5 years, you really haven't needed blank. Can we skim back here?
And at that point, they're giving me, I have them fill out some more in-depth paperwork if they want a new position. They have to justify that's called a justification form, but justifying a new position. So
I just have a question. How come last year we spent 5,600 on hazardous waste material and this year we're not going to spend anything on hazardous waste removal?
because I believe we don't have anything.
You removed the hazardous waste.
Well, that's good.
Hazardous waste.
That's good.
We recycle.
Everything.
Or Kenny thought that he had enough in another area that
To catch me.
Is it a vandalism?
And reduce operating.
Anytime you see reduced operating on the left side, Kenny left it in on the right side. For some reason, I don't know, but on the left side, you're gonna see reduced operating all over the budget. Last year, we had to make 2.9. That's me going through and taking money out so we can get to that number. So I wanted to make sure,
Doesn't really mean anything on the right.
doesn't mean anything on the right.
Okay, that's what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
so, but if it's on the left, you're gonna see that throughout the book in every cost center. Every cost center had a haircut last year because we had to make a budget number that was very, very tough.
In last year's approved budget, is for the specific block, I don't know what you call these. Does this include the reduced?
Yes.
8,000? Okay.
Yes, it's bigger. So these are all spreadsheets where they're just totaling numbers. So, but I make that visible so both you and your department heads and Zach, Patty, and everybody can see where those funds came from. Did make
And
sense.
one of the pieces, that we have those individual conversations with all those different cost centers, we're also trying to hit what we think. In this case, we were looking at that range between, 3, 4.5, 5% based on the conversations that we had with Karen and Nathan when they came. And what their kind of initial marching orders were around what they thought might be possible. So we're trying to make sure we're within that realm and looking at all these different requests from different cost centers and trying to come to some place that we think is going to make it work. Because obviously, we always have conversations about, look, we only give me a request for an additional position if you really, really, really need it. And then we get, 15, I really, really, really need it. And then we got to figure out how we're going to make that work. And so this is a compilation of all those things. As I said, we get all those requests. We come to some initial ideas based on where we think we're at. We go back to the principals and directors to say, this is where we think we are based on this moment. Where do we collectively, can we collectively support where we think we're at? Have a little bit more dialogue, we get some additional feedback, and we go back one more time and do some reworking. And then we do come back to them to make sure they're informed before we're going to present to you. They didn't get a binder in advance of all the lines, but they have the broad picture of what it is that we're going to present to you before we go.
So got me right.
Yeah.
What did you say right now was your guidelines that you were given between 3.5 and?
I think they were looking for really the way they phrased it was like a continuing services budget. What is continuing services? And then what is, and if you were able to go a little bit further, what would that look like? And if you go a little bit less, what would that look like? So I think we've tried to, and we'll talk in more depth about it when we get into it, about kind of some decisions we made about, okay, there's some things where we had one idea about strategic investments based on the strategic plan, and we've kind of hybrided some stuff to be able to accomplish a couple things with one position as opposed to two. So we have some stuff like that. We've scaled back on some things where there's some retirements that we're planning to not replace. So we can actually, because if we just maintained everybody, we were going to be 6-7%, and it wasn't realistic. So we've taken advantage of some retirements and positions that have gone.
So this 4.48 is maintained.
Well, yeah, it's maintaining. Of course, it's like once maintained. We believe this is a fair. I mean, we're down 4.5 FTEs in order to make it happen. So we think we're showing a real good faith effort on towards the city side to say, look, we've reduced positions. We're still at 4.5%. We've repurposed some things to try to hit some of our strategic goals. We feel like we're reasonable, even if this is not 3%. Like we're doing some really serious work to try to accomplish all those things at the same time. I think we're cognizant of the need, not just for our relationship with the city council, but I know I'm cognizant of the creation of this around the need for our staff to have a less traumatic budget season than we had last year. So.
I will add though that teachers, the principals, when they came in this year, they were really good about realizing, we have to look at our budgets differently, utilizing data, looking at their people, what, the programs, and they came in
Yeah, I exaggerated 2015. I exaggerated 2015 thing, you know,
But if they came in
they-
really
they were
responsible,
respectful and responsible.
Yeah.
and they understood that, you know, we're in a new process now, we have to really, you know, kind of get lean to me, and they really came up, they really answered the call, and they, that's why when we came back to them with our 4.48, said, look at this, will this work? And they were like, yeah, we can make it work.
Yeah, and I would say, well, I think to be transparent, I mean, there's definitely things in there that some folks are like, I really need that thing. And it's like, yeah, but we're at, you know, we can't be pushing, I mean, our internal conversation is we can't be pushing 6%. It's just not realistic, and we'll lose control of what the outcome is going to be. So that, in terms of what we're presenting you, it's within all those things come into what it is.
Just to, so the 4.56 FTEs, is that already, from retirements, people that signal retirements?
It's a combination of things. We can definitely get into it in more detail.
Fine, just curious.
Some are just retirements that can be replaced, and some are not.
You mentioned that the special ed came down by $1 million. Can you don't have to do it tonight, but can you explain to us how that happened? I think the city council would be interested in that, because that was one of the,
Well,
that was one of the
it
stumbling.
didn't go down, man.
Yeah, it didn't go.
The level of increase
Increase was smaller.
It was a much smaller increase this
Last year
year.
it went up 1.3 million. This year it's only going up 3.
So it's still up.
It's still up.
But it's less.
It didn't go down. It's just, it's less pain than it was last year. And it was just from, managing out of district placements, managing all the other expenses that are in that call center.
It's-
And, there's some other, mitigating factors that some of them we have control over, and some of them we don't. And some of the ones.
And we still, I would just say one more thing about that.
Yeah.
It's that we did, and I'm not looking to take shots, if I'm not, but we did, as part of the things we did propose that ultimately were not accepted, we did have other things we thought would be create cost savings within special education. Now, whether or not that would have got us to the point where, 300,000 was zero, or 300,000 was, we're actually decreased the amount of spending overall that we're doing in special education is hard to say. But we had multiple positions that were connected to programming that would have had more students stay in district than otherwise, that were not accepted as part of our conversation with city council last year. So, and some of those are going to be it's going to be hard to quantify all of it, because I want to, some ways that I want to be able to come back and say, hey, look, you didn't provide us some of these things that we said we needed. As a result of that, this extra $180,000 we were looking for could have saved you $500. I'd love to be in that position. I don't know. We'll see if we're going to be in that position. And to be in that position without, I'm sorry, we apologize, Nancy,
No,
but
that's-
be in that position without also getting into information that makes students who have a right to privacy individually identifiable. We're gonna have to be really careful about that too, at the same time.
I just wish we could explain better to the city council why our out-of-district budget is so high. And I know you can't obviously say somebody's name, but can we say this particular student has these needs and needs to go to an out-of-district? I don't know. I don't know how to do it, but that was a, yeah.
Because other districts do get a handle on this to some degree in a non-public, because it's confidential student information. Because I don't think we need to get down to the level of what's the exact diagnosis and all of the child's personal information. But I do believe there's some room for us to have a non-public to discuss a little bit more granular detail about confidential information for the purpose of budgeting. It can't be for no reason. I don't know if we have time for that within this 2-month cycle or not, but it could be worth looking at.
Yeah, just ask a procedural question.
Yeah.
So I'm just looking at the workshop sessions and the topics, and I noticed that January 20th is focused on special ed. So I'm assuming that that's when we'll go into depth on special ed questions and out of district placements and all that. Is that right? I don't want to make assumptions, but
That's the plan. So for the first one, the facilities one, so Ken Lynchy, who's the director of facility maintenance grounds, he'll be here to give you an overview, and then be here to answer a bunch of questions. And then when we get to special ed, the Director of People Services, Dan Alexander, will be here.
So one of the things I'm just thinking about my homework.
Yeah.
Frankly.
Yeah.
So in terms of my homework, if for getting ready for next week, I want to focus on facilities particularly because that's the topic next week. And then there's a lot of things in here that in this budget that don't hit all these topics. So sort of, can you help me understand a little bit better about sort of how this gets broken into the workshop session?
Yeah, sure. So what's happened past is we try to identify on the front end where we think are big drivers.
Okay.
And what are things that are moving this budget one way or the other, or things that were, are big decision points. So we try to build those in, and then we leave sessions where it's like, what do board members particularly want to see a drill down on? Only because it's sometimes we need lead time to make sure we get to the staff in front of you that you want, and that they have an opportunity, especially valuable when we have preloaded question sets, so they can come into the room sometimes with data that they wouldn't be able to produce on the fly, but they can get to you and be like, well, look, here's this information, here's why I'm suggesting things I'm suggesting, or things I've faced in my department over the course of the last 6 months that leads me to thinking this is what we need.
We've done sometimes in the past. It's hard with facilities being in a week to go through all of this and come up with really concise questions. But you can certainly email, maybe me and Brian, and copy Zach and Patty, any questions you have about facilities. It'll be easier for special ed because that's a little further away to give legitimate lead time for that presentation. For facilities, by the time you read this and get it to them, they might have a little time, but it's always good to give people a heads up if there's something you have a specific question about.
And it tends to be in facilities less variables.
True.
So where there's a lot of moving parts that are anticipatory inside of special education. So I think, sometimes it's easier for Kenny on the fly than it would be for Dan on the fly because the nature of the operations.
And then
I do want to add too, that there's 2 other meetings after this. We haven't put a topic in yet. That is for all of you to decide who you want to talk to at those points. Because at that point, we've gotten into the budget a little bit more. You have more questions. Maybe we should bring this person in. Maybe it's principal of the schools or something like that you want to talk to a little bit more. And that's where we fill in those blanks.
And I would say, and this at least will help direct how she wants us to go. But I think in the past too, it's not, we might talk about facilities and we wrap that up and we think we're in good shape. We've still got some time. There are things that we will be able to just, without any staff here, we'll be able to talk you through. But there'll be other things where it's like, I really need so-and-so in to kind of walk you through the level of detail.
And so on the 13th on the agenda, one of the things is to sort of think ahead as you're going through stuff and you're uncovering, you've got questions. What are some other big areas that you might want more information on? And we could designate that depending on which one is the work session, which one is defaulting to us.
The joint work session is with city council as well.
And that's different. So that, just to be clear, that's a different thing than what we've done in the past. That's new. It's a new request based on a city council person who requested that opportunity.
That sounds great.
We've had some joint work sessions with the council in budget season, but it's usually as they get closer to their part of the show, and we some additional I think is right. That's maybe the way I just
Is the work session is it CIP related or is it operational?
I think I'm gonna work with the manager. Not exactly clear. I think both those things are potentially part of that conversation, but I'm not totally clear.
Okay.
So,
Because if we're talking about operational budget, it seems like the work session should be the operational budget.
Yeah.
But we could have a separate conversation about CIP.
I mean, the night that it was requested,
It was about CIP.
it was during CIP,
Okay.
but it was framed towards, I think we need to have a conversation with the school district about its long-term
Building needs.
spending needs.
Which felt like, to me, it sounded like it was part of the CICP conversation and it was sort of like long-term facilities and investment in infrastructure.
Right.
It didn't feel like it was a conversation about the operational budget. I mean, I think that's a good conversation to have,
I
but
feel-
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was gonna ask earlier, kind of what are we gonna do differently this year than we did last year? Because last year felt like a really rough season, as we all know. But now I'm getting nervous about one thing, which is I think one of the things that didn't happen last year early enough was that we weren't presented with a continuing service budget from the beginning, or at least not one that we all understood. So I want to make sure I'm understanding what this is, what you're showing us here.
Sure.
Because it sounds like what you're saying is you've already taken this and manipulated it a bit from what would actually be our continuing service.
Yeah, so we're not using continuing service, like, we're just doing exactly what we were doing before. So in this case, I mean, how are we providing a similar level of service with some repurposing to try to do, so it's like, do the same.
Yeah.
And get some of the other things we want to do, like management of counselors, some additional stuff in spend that we were hoping to accomplish. So there's things like that where we're trying to do it, hit the mark, and do it in a way where we don't think we would significantly reduce the level of service. So maybe the better phrasing is the not significantly reduced level of service budget.
Well, I appreciate what you're trying to do, and I think
Yeah.
we're gonna need to do it. I think for the sake of the council in particular, I think Byron was the one who pointed this out last year, that it's really important for us to say, here's what it would cost to absolutely change nothing and just keep doing what we're doing.
Right.
Because you're already giving stuff away when you're presenting what you're calling the continuing services budget, but it's not, it's a reduced budget
Right.
already.
Right.
So I think it's really important that we have the actual budget
it's a good-
exactly as it is,
No, I think
and
that's-
then we can call it whatever it becomes, but I don't want to be throwing stuff away right from the start,
Yeah,
especially FTEs. I mean,
When the city manager came to us, one of the asks was a no change continuing operations
Right.
budget.
Yeah.
And then what would you do if you did a little bit more, and what would you deal with if you had to live
Right.
with a little bit less?
and it,
So yeah, I agree with him. We don't want to just give them less. Just
agree, because we want credit for the homework.
Yes.
right, we
Right,
want them
so
to know how.
I think that's a fair way to put it. Although we would, I think to be fair, as things have changed in the organization and people are going to retire or things are going to happen, we want to take advantage of those opportunities to be like, oh, here are these other strategic things we want to do. Now if that position's open, we wouldn't decide to refill it. We put it over here instead. And so there's some of that, but of course, we are talking about a reduction in overall FTEs.
Not to wordsmith, would you call it a continuing program, program quality?
I'm always open to a good work.
That's what will be different.
So, but I do think that's fair, is that maybe we will come, I think for us to establish a different way to talk about it. And to say, if we did nothing, everybody was continuing to be employed, this is what we think it would cost.
I
And
think that number is really critical.
Yeah.
To start from.
no, I think that's a good piece.
The service of your program quality be here. Just a
Yeah, no, I think it's very good.
Does the council or the city manager know of our 4.48% increase in this budget? And they're okay with that? Because last year we had a horrible time with, they came out, asked us for 2.9% increase. We came in at 3.9% increase and we got hammered.
So-
So are they happy with this number?
So I would say they're aware of the number. And so I think this is the fairest thing. City staff work for a city council who has not constituted it. So I would say that the communication I've had so far with them, with no guidance from new council, is that what we have done so far based on what they city staff asked us to do feels within the realm of reasonableness. I think it's the fairest way to put it, but I don't want to pin them down because then they have the new council come in and be like, wait a minute, we haven't had an opportunity to talk to you. What do you mean this is fair? You know, so, but I think based on the guidance that the city manager and the deputy city manager gave us and the conversations they'd had and the follow-ups we've had, and a quick 30,000 foot kind of conversation about what we were going to propose, there was not a dialogue that was, this is totally unreasonable. you're not being responsible in what it is you're bringing forward. Now, there's way more stuff to happen, right? We're gonna get this new council in place. They're gonna have their own ideas about whatever. And then that'll influence, kind of the ongoing conversation. The city manager's goal for herself, I assume, is always going to be that she presents a budget that she thinks she can get passed by the city council. And so she's going to have to get the temperature of the new council, and then we'll see where we are. But I would say, as of the moment, based on what we had, within the realm of reasonableness.
Which I think is a mechanic that's important, which I called it out earlier, which is we go directly to the council. There is a proxy, and it is the city manager.
Right.
And so, the city staff, the city manager is going to present a number for the school district that they think they can get past with the council. It isn't what this board passes.
It almost never is.
Yeah.
Right. And I think there's been situations in the past where there are things that are not included in the manager's budget that ultimately get added, or not the thing, because they don't have line item control, but a dollar amount equivalent to a thing gets added to the budget after their consideration of the manager's budget. Sometimes more things get put in, or dollar amounts get taken out. And I do think you mentioned before, Byron, about them not directly seeing, like, they're not seeing this.
They don't see it.
But
I mean, it's public, they can get it, but in terms of
there was I think I could look back. I think they included last year for the first time, partially based on this type of conversation, a comparison chart of the board, and it might have been one chart on one page. The board asked for this. This is what the manager.
Well, I think the work session is going to be a good parlay in terms of, having this be totally transparent with them. And I think that mechanic that I referenced earlier, I think is a little bit softened by that. Yeah.
The other big difference this year is it's not a collective bargaining year.
Yes.
It's a real challenge to pass our budget in February and then be still negotiating with our largest unions further into the spring. And part of the budget number that the council passes is knowing that they're also going to have to give us an extra chunk of money based on whatever's negotiated for those salaries. And that's in every 3-ish year challenge, depending on the length of the contracts. But that was a big complicating factor last year.
Yeah, I want to add, I mean, that was my knee-jerk reaction, is same as Pips. It's just, it created an anchor point that said continuous services. So we need to be very careful how we frame it.
It's really,
because part of it is, if we did, let's say, because again, I don't think the edict of what we want to do is necessarily continuing service or improvement services.
Right.
If we could do that with an actual continuing operating budget, from what we're at, that's a better position to be in by reshuffling people around. But it also gives that ability, if they know what in their mind what continuing services means. So I just think we've got to be very careful about how this is framed, anchored.
that's a good point.
So
because there is that when you get to the next level, especially once it's gone through the manager spot, you're to the council already assumes everything you've already got. Right. Like, and I think, right, that's where it comes like, oh, they're just going to be like, oh, great, that's great. And we want, and when it's like, whoa, wait, what about we already gave, and especially in an environment where it's, it's not about comparative giving. You do look and you want to look at, what are other departments giving? If we're reducing our FTE count, and we think we're doing it in a way that can at least maintain, if not improve services, are other departments doing the same thing around the city?
yeah, and our NASDAQ numbers say we're not going to go down. By maybe by a pupil. So
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're good for tonight. It's homework time. We did our work. Now we sit back. We
This looks like
put our feet up. We watch TV. We wait for you guys.
I think you did a great job, Brian, and
Yes,
Zach, putting this
very well
together.
organized.
Now, whole team. What's that?
Getting off the bus now. Yeah, sorry. Pull it up. Oh, I have a question. Sorry.
I have a suggestion. Because we saw such a spike in insurance and things like that,
can we spend a little bit of time during some of these work sessions on getting to the nitty gritty of, I mean, you did a great job summarizing. What I'm thinking too is the public's gonna be here during this. They're gonna wanna hear, they're gonna wanna know why insurance, workers' comp and insurance and everything been skyrocketing.
It's a good.
That if we can just take some time to explain how and why that happened, that's not,
Yep.
it's out of our hands. Like, I think people need to realize that. I also think what people need to realize too, and it's something I would suggest for when the special ed coordinator is here, to explain how a special ed team works.
Yep.
When they decide that a student is going out of district, it is out of our hands. I think a lot of people don't understand that special ed team for that student controls that narrative. So it's not us saying, all right, you know what, we can't handle it, send that kid out. That's not the case. I think, again, the public needs to understand how this special ed team works.
There are some nuances to that though, that I don't know that the public's gonna get. When you do evaluations that actually lead to a false result that isn't actually accurate, it can lead to putting somebody out of district that really shouldn't be. So.
Agreed. But at this, some of the conversations, some of the things said to us last year is, why are you sending all these kids out of district? It's not us.
No,
It's not
No, I
saying
agree.
it's-
I agree.
but I
think
There's a lot of nuance
Yeah.
in those. in
Yeah.
those
I
conversations.
think
There
the
is.
general public needs to understand, maybe just in a basic
Yeah.
way, it's not our decision.
Agree.
Yeah.
I also think there's a larger conversation to be had, which I think we've touched on several times, but about whether or not we can change those numbers. Because-
Agreed. Like almost do a wish
Yeah.
board
Tipping point.
of how we want in-house special ed
Exactly.
down the road. What is our goals? But
But that's a long term.
Those are,
That's
actually
definitely a long
effort
term.
that Needs to start sooner rather than later.
yeah, I agreed. Agreed.
From special ed, you need to stop outgoing. Or even think about bringing anybody back. A lot of
Right.
times, This, you have the student that's been having a, really, really hard time. They get to a program, they're doing really well. And you don't necessarily want to take that person and change the grade that thing they're in, bring them back in order to save money when that disruption could
Agreed.
take them
All
to a
kinds
bad result for the student.
All kinds of,
There's-
so many of those, they're so situational.
It's just not. cut-
But I think I think having for the public, the general mechanisms of how does this work? How do these decisions get made?
Yeah.
What's, once we go outbound, what's the ongoing valuation of the need? All those things are good ones and great ones for Dan to speak to.
Right. Yeah. And not getting into the nitty gritty, just
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Great.
Good suggestion.
All right. Well, looking forward to the conversation, as always.
So what's the process for adding additional topics of conversation?
I would say funnel them through Lisa, and I think.
Copy me and Brian and copy Steph and Patty, given had a time crunch, that way
Yeah,
everybody
we can
sees what the
work it.
questions are.
Yeah. Sooner we've got stuff, the more thorough we can be in our responses.
How comfortable are we because I know these are workshops, how comfortable are we doing Zoom calls because I'm gonna be flat on my back for the next 4 weeks.
I mean, we can do the ones that are us workshops are easy. And I think joint session, we should be able to pull it off. I mean, we should be able to manage it. We still, all these are things that have
So
public.
anything that's in our control, we already have all the links all set. So
Okay.
I can set up, just like I always do when folks can't make it, I'll just send you and you can. But if it's the,
If we're in the
city
chambers,
council-
still, if in the chambers, we're
no,
gonna
it
have.
doesn't matter, but if
We
it's
should be
city
able to-
council who's in charge of the meeting with, but that's not the situation. It's
Okay.
all ours.
Awesome. Thank
So
you.
we should have.
We should be able to.
Great.
minor administrative question, since we don't see each other's emails anymore, can somebody send out the new members' email addresses to us
Yeah.
when they get them?
They can all agree on that. They can-
You do?
Okay.
Actually,
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we had a list that had our addresses and cell phone numbers, so we could.
We can put something,
That's true.
all I can put something.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
All right.
Anything else? Now a motion to adjourn. Anyone?
It's the motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Des. Second? All in favor? Aye.
Still think.
That was gonna be.
All after.
It's gonna